You wake up and the first thing you do is check your phone. Before your feet hit the floor, before you've had water, before you've looked in a mirror, you're already performing. You're already curating. You're already deciding which version of yourself gets to exist in the world today. And here's what nobody's really talking about. We're living through the most profound identity crisis in human history, and most of us don't even realize it's happening to us right now. If you've ever felt like you don't quite know who you are anymore, or if you've wondered why you feel like a different person depending on which app you're on, then this video is going to resonate with you deeply. And if it does, please hit subscribe, because we're diving into uncomfortable truths about identity, authenticity, and the fractured selves we're all becoming. The crisis isn't that we have multiple identities. Humans have always played different roles in different contexts. Your work self is different from your family self, and both are different from your close friend's self. That's normal. That's actually psychologically healthy. The crisis is what's happening now. We're not just playing different roles anymore. We're creating completely separate digital personas, and these personas are starting to feel more real than the person in the mirror. Think about it. When you're scrolling through someone's Instagram, you're not seeing a person. You're seeing a highlight reel that's been filtered, edited, color-corrected, and strategically curated over hours or days. And we all know this intellectually. We've all heard the phrase, Instagram isn't real life. But knowing it and actually believing it are two different things. Because your brain doesn't distinguish between the curated version and the authentic version anymore. You're starting to believe that the edited, filtered, polished version is the real one. And worse, you're starting to believe that about yourself too. Here's where it gets really dark. You're not just consuming other people's curated identities, you're building your own. You're spending hours crafting the perfect caption, choosing the perfect filter, timing your post for maximum engagement. You're treating your life like it's a product that needs marketing, and in the process, something fundamental has shifted. You're no longer living your life. You're curating the documentation of your life, which is a completely different thing. The documentation has become more important than the actual experience. You've probably been in a moment that was genuinely beautiful, genuinely meaningful, and the first thing you did was think about how to capture it for social media. You didn't just experience it, you experienced it through the lens of how other people would perceive your experience of it. That's the identity crisis nobody's talking about. It's not that we don't know who we are. It's that we're actively constructing false versions of ourselves and spending so much energy maintaining those false versions that we're losing touch with who we actually are underneath all the filters and the narratives and the carefully constructed stories. And here's the thing that really messes with your sense of self. Different platforms demand different versions of you. You're one person on LinkedIn, a completely different person on TikTok, another version on Instagram, yet another on Twitter or X, or whatever you're using. Each platform has its own culture, its own rules, its own unspoken expectations for how you should present yourself, and you're code switching between all of them constantly. Your brain is literally fragmenting across different digital spaces, each one rewarding a slightly different version of your personality. On LinkedIn, you're professional and ambitious. On Twitter, you're witty and opinionated. On Instagram, you're aspirational and aesthetically curated. On TikTok, you're entertaining and relatable. These aren't just different facets of the same person anymore. These are becoming separate identities that you're actively managing. And the scary part is that you don't always know which version is the real one. You don't know which one is you, because every single version of you is designed to get validation from a specific audience. Every post is optimized for engagement. Every photo is chosen for maximum likes. Every story is constructed to provoke a specific emotional response. You're not expressing yourself anymore. You're performing yourself, and that performance is becoming your identity. Here's another layer to this that's particularly insidious. The algorithms are literally training you to be a certain way. They're rewarding certain types of content, certain personality traits, certain ways of presenting yourself. The algorithm doesn't care about the real you. It cares about engagement. So you're being shaped, molded, and rewarded for behaviors that have nothing to do with who you actually are. You're becoming whoever the algorithm wants you to be, and you're doing it without even realizing it's happening. You're not choosing your identity anymore. The algorithm is choosing it for you, and you're reinforcing that choice every single time you post something that gets engagement. This is creating a weird feedback loop where the more time you spend online, the more fragmented your sense of self becomes. You're spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day absorbing thousands of curated identities, performing your own curated identity across multiple platforms, and completely losing touch with the person you are when nobody's watching, when there's no audience, when there's no potential for engagement or validation or likes. Who are you then? If you stripped away all the platforms, all the filters, all the audiences, all the potential for social validation, who would be left? Do you even know anymore? And if you don't, that's not a personal failure. That's a systemic crisis. Because the infrastructure we've built is literally designed to make you lose your sense of self. It's designed to make you dependent on external validation. It's designed to make you perform rather than be. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to start waking up to it. Because the longer you stay unconscious about this, the more your sense of identity gets eroded, the more you become whoever the algorithm and your audience want you to be, instead of whoever you actually are. The irony is that people have never been more connected, and yet people have never felt more alone and more lost. You've got thousands of followers, but you don't feel like anyone really knows you. Because nobody does. Nobody knows the real you because you don't really show the real you to anyone, not even to yourself. You've been performing for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to just be, and I know that's uncomfortable to hear. I know that watching this might be making you feel a little bit defensive or attacked, and that's actually a good sign. That means this is hitting something real. That means you recognize yourself in this description. And the fact that you're willing to watch a video about it means you're starting to wake up to the problem. That's actually really important, because you can't solve a problem until you acknowledge it exists. And most people aren't even willing to acknowledge this problem. They're too invested in their curated identity. They're too dependent on the validation they get from maintaining it. So if you're watching this, you're already ahead of most people in terms of awareness. And if this is resonating with you, please hit the like button, because what we're discussing here matters. This isn't abstract. This is about your actual sense of self, your actual connection to reality, your actual relationships and experiences. So like this video if you feel seen by it. Now here's the thing. We can't just delete all our social media and go live in the woods. That's not realistic for most people. Social media isn't going away. The algorithms aren't going away. The pressure to perform and curate isn't going away. So we have to find a different approach. We have to start being intentional about our relationship with these platforms, instead of letting these platforms be unconsciously intentional about us. We have to start asking ourselves real questions. What version of myself am I performing right now? Is this authentic to who I actually am, or am I just doing what the algorithm rewards? Who am I when nobody's watching? And more importantly, who do I want to be? And are those two things aligned? Because until you get those things aligned, you're going to keep experiencing this fragmentation. You're going to keep feeling like you don't know who you are. You're going to keep performing instead of being, and that's exhausting, that's soul-crushing, and you don't have to keep doing it. You can start small. You can post less. You can curate less. You can share things that are true instead of things that are optimized for engagement. You can have conversations with people where you're not thinking about how to document the conversation for social media. You can have experiences where you don't photograph them. You can fail and not tell anyone about it. You can have opinions that aren't designed to provoke engagement. You can be weird and ugly and imperfect, and just let that be okay. You can spend time with people who know the real you, the uncurated version, and let that version of yourself exist and matter. And slowly, you can start to rebuild a coherent sense of self that's actually connected to who you are instead of who the algorithm wants you to be. That process isn't easy, and it's not fast, because you're literally rewiring your brain and your identity after years or decades of performing. But it's possible, and it's necessary, because the alternative is spending your entire life as a fractured, fragmented, curated version of yourself, never quite knowing who you actually are, always chasing validation from people who don't know the real you. And that's not a life. That's a performance, and you deserve better than that. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Right now, today, in one small way, how can you be more authentic? How can you let the real version of yourself exist a little bit more, and then actually do that? Don't just think about it. Don't just watch this video and nod along and then go back to your regularly scheduled programming of curating and performing. Actually make one small choice to be more real, more authentic, more you. And then tomorrow, make another one. Because that's how you start to reclaim your identity. That's how you start to become whole again. Thanks so much for watching. If this resonated with you, please subscribe, because we're going to keep talking about these uncomfortable truths about identity, authenticity, and what it means to be human in a world that's designed to fragment and perform. And I genuinely want to hear from you in the comments. What part of your life do you curate the most? Where do you feel the biggest gap between who you are and who you're performing to be? I want to know. Leave that in the comments, and let's start a real conversation about this.